Welcome back. Panelists here. Charlie Cook, editor and publisher of the Cook Political Report, NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker, MSNBC political analyst and a former aide to President George W. Bush, Elise Jordan, and Washington Post columnist and NBC News contributor David Ignatius, author of the new novel, The Quantum Spy. You don't need to write novels, David. The reality is a great story that we're living, man.
No novel is as crazy, could possibly be as crazy as what we're living through.
All right, Roy Moore, Elise, I got to ask you here, what's the party? I mean, Pat Toomey wouldn't answer the question. What's worse, if Roy Moore wins or loses for the GOP?
I think absolutely it is worse if Roy Moore wins for the GOP. And you look at that interview, that's case in point. It was so uncomfortable for Senator Toomey to try to defend these charges of pedophilia against Roy Moore. And he was forced to say the allegations were 4 years old.
In fairness, it's molestation. It isn't pedophilia. Molestation is we looked up this legal definition to be careful there, but it's molestation.
Molestation.
When it's teens, when it's preteen, it is pedophilia. When we're having to debate this,
molestation
versus
when you are having to defend someone who is accused of it and who there are corroborated eyewitnesses backing up the case, it's a tough position to be in.
Charlie Cook. Is Mitch McConnell, the way he's been, this clearly felt almost orchestrated. The minute, within an hour this came out, many of the McConnell allies came out and said he's got to go. Sounds like Mitch McConnell has decided it's worse if Roy Moore wins.
I think Mitch McConnell thinks that this is just so horrible that it's not under his control, so he's got to live with whatever happens. I think if the voters of Alabama, if they choose to vote for Roy Moore, I think the Senate's obliged to seat him.
Pat Toomey didn't look like he was ready to say that.
Well, but Pat Toomey, but you know, the thing is, you and I have devoted our entire adult lives to studying elections and politics and candidate voter behavior, and you get to the point where you're pretty good at doing it. But I would argue that the rules have changed in the last 25 years. That 1992, Bill Clinton, before the New Hampshire primary, hit with Jennifer Flowers' telephone recordings, the Vietnam draft story. The old days, he would have dropped out. If he didn't, he would have lost. But he toughed it out. He survived all the way up through last year. And Billy Bush tapes Access Hollywood. Normally, a candidate would have dropped out. Donald Trump stayed in and won. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I really don't. You can't predict anymore.
Well, we talked to some voters. Here's an array of folks that are inclined to support Republicans in Alabama. Here's what they said to us.
When I look at the other side, it's like I felt Trump. One was going over the cliff, and the other, I looked down there, was a rocky road.
I don't believe them because I feel like they are timed so suspiciously right before this major election.
I really am upset at my own party for condemning him so quickly.
It's going to divide the party, Kristen. You've been talking to Bannon's allies, right, and he's still sticking by Roy Moore until more. I thought it was interesting. He did say until he learned, unless more information comes out. Even he's qualifying it, though.
Absolutely. I think this is a real test of Bannon's war against the establishment. A lot of Republicans are privately saying, hey, look, this is Steve Bannon not adequately vetting candidates who he's putting on the front lines. But look, they are digging in. You heard Mark Short say that might be some more coming out. I am told that they're likely going to try to pin this in some way, shape, or form on the Republican establishment as a hit job. Is that going to work, though? That's the big question. I spoke to a lot of Republicans, Chuck, over the weekend who said the interview that Moore did with Sean Hannity was game over because he didn't deny dating underage women. Girls.
And when he said, not without their mother's permission, I think it made folks squeamish there. David, yet more tumult for the Republicans at a time they're trying to govern.
You know, as a governing party, they just keep whiffing the ball. There's distraction after distraction. I was just so struck looking at the brief interviews you had of voters in Alabama. There is this thing that psychologists tell us about called confirmation bias, where you take in the information that confirms what you already believe, and you just reject anything that doesn't. And I felt we were watching that. People saying, well, look, the charges, the Democrats do this and that. And what you heard heard from Mark Short and from Pat Toomey is the seriousness of the charge seen from a different vantage outside that confirmation bias world. I thought when Short said there is a special place in hell reserved for people who do things like what's generally described, wow, that's heavy language. And if he gets elected by Alabama voters, how do you live with that kind of definition?
I'm going to stay with you here, David, because it seems to me when you say this confirmation bias, I was also thinking of the other story I was about to change to, which is the president and Putin and the Russia investigation and how he keeps essentially dishing up confirmation bias for his supporters.
He does. So I'll use another term of art. Intelligence professionals talk about deniable covert action. And what deniable covert action means is that if you're asked about it, you say it didn't happen. So Russia conducted a action against the United States. The evidence is clear. Our intelligence agencies have said so. And the former KGB officer who is president of Russia is asked about it, and he denies it. Well, of course he does. That's what you do. Putin is the last person you'd ask, did you do it or not, under the rules of this game. It is sort of astonishing that the president doesn't see that in this world, denials mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm going to pause it here. I want to pick up this conversation and do a little elections, too, that are outside the state of Alabama, Charlie, I promise. So when we come back, are we experiencing a defining moment?